Welcome back, my friends, to the Sweet Spot, where IT leaders share their insight with other leaders and others that want to lead. My name is Carlos Vargas, and as every week, and my two co-hosts, Howard Holton and Paul Lewis.
Hello. Did you memorize that, or is it written in front of you or something?
No, I actually, after
I've often
years
wondered.
putting it just come out. And the funny thing is that sometimes I have to hold myself when I do other stuff because it come out almost like the same. I'm
I
like,
can see that.
it's a Sweet Spot. I'm like, no.
Yep, I have to hold back on other podcasts because it is so easy for me to go, welcome back to another episode of the Sweet Spot. I'm gonna go, that's actually not this podcast. Thankfully, I own the recording. We can clip it.
Carlos, you host all the pods you do.
Yep.
Howard, do you host any of the pods you do?
Discovering disruptions in tech when we're on the road, yeah. I
Okay.
mean,
Well, the ones where you're the interviewer.
Yeah.
I don't do any of those. I don't host any podcasts. I'm only a participant.
right, you're talent only.
Talent only. Like if I do an interview, I'm not sure I'd call that a podcast, like a webinar, or if I'm interviewing Google or something. But if like these kind of things, it is very rare that I'm moderating the conversation. It's much more likely that I'm answering questions.
I mean, the scary part is sometimes I'm moderating a conversation.
Of yourself. That's the weird part.
I mean,
Howard, what do you think of this?
when there are voices in my head?
Are you moderating yourself because you're speaking like you have the bad side and the good side, so you have like two sides of yourself?
No, like Paul said in Vegas, I am unmanageable. So I'm unmanageable.
Did I actually say that?
No, but I think that may have been subtext. I'm not sure.
I'm
not offended by it. I don't disagree with it. I couldn't imagine having to manage me.
I'm pretty sure I said Howard shouldn't be managed versus Howard is unmanageable. I think those are different things.
I mean, I tend to think so as well, but also I would hate to manage me.
So it looks like you guys are a little bit cold. I am a little bit chilly, like it's 70, going down to 69.
It's not even 70 inside my house with the heater on. Like inside my house, it is 63. I keep the thermostat at 63.
So is it cold or no?
No, I mean it's all right. It's just it is with the rising cost of everything. It is way cheaper just to put on a light jacket. And I was outside right before I came to the podcast.
Okay.
It's very cold in my house. Like I haven't done the conversion, but I was walking around this morning at minus 17. So it is
inside your house. It was minus 17.
Outside, inside, that'd be pretty cold.
Yeah. You were children, I would imagine.
We got to keep the pipes still warm in order to have the flow of water.
Right. So what is it inside the house? What do you keep your thermostat set at?
We keep the house inside at 21. Which I don't know.
So like 73, something like that?
Maybe in that realm.
Yeah.
Wow.
I used to be much
big money here. Jeez.
It used to be much, much lower when I was oil. I spent anywhere between $750 and $800 a month in oil. So that meant
that's crazy.
It was very cold winters because I wasn't about to do that. Very cold winters, and we used fireplaces just to keep, at least the one room it was warm.
Sure.
But as I converted to
natural
gas, which I had to spend my share of $300,000 to get it down to my house. Now we abuse that privilege.
Do you not have propane?
Propane was possible, but the energy company came and said, hey, there's 10 houses. If you guys each chip in, we will pipe it down to you from the main road.
Wow.
And I'm several kilometers from the main road.
Sure. So that's still like 10. If yours was 1/10, then it's still $30,000.
It was not a cheap experience.
Right. So
but that included taking the oil out, which is costly, and replacing the furnace.
Right? Oh,
and water heater. Yeah.
All right. Well,
it was all in.
A lot of money, but
it
starts to get a little bit more reasonable.
That, and it changed the value of the house, right? So now I got to think it's I don't know if I could measure it in thousands of dollars, but it's certainly more valuable of a property to acquire.
Right. So what's going to happen to the property value when the Clampetts from Denver move in on January? What is it? January 19th or something?
That you're moving up here.
I mean, sure, starting to feel that way.
Is this
There has
part
yet
of your
to
wrap
be-
up for 2024?
Yeah, there has yet to be anything that I have heard that fills me with confidence in even the slightest fashion.
Confidence and joy.
Right. The last I heard, we basically sold the presidency. I mean, we sold the presidency. Right. So first off, I would like to. I'm not sure it solves anything because, as I understand it, you are now the 51st state.
That's right.
Right.
I'm not sure if it's Greenland, Canada, or Panama. It's one of those three. We'll be the 51st.
I mean, I'm not sure he could identify any of the three on a map with any accuracy. Right.
Canada shouldn't be hard, but I guess it's possible.
I mean, I also like the idea that the country is massive anyhow.
Right.
Right. It's like got to be the 50th. It just would be easier if they were the 51st state. I mean, no, it would not.
Slightly easier.
I mean, in no way. Maybe the 51st through the 60th. I'll give you
Right.
that.
Right.
You know what I mean? But it's an awful lot of landmass for a single state to be governed a single way.
Right. How
Right.
big is Alaska versus Texas, assuming those are the two biggest states?
I think Alaska is like 3 times the size of Texas.
Okay, so that's massive, which with less people but more wildlife.
And oil.
Yes. I mean, if you compare it to, it's less than 3 times, 2.5 times, 2.5
2.5
times.
times.
Like if you count polar bears, grizzly bears, and any mammal weighing more than say 250 pounds, so it matches the average weight of an Alaskan.
Right.
The population is roughly the same as any other state, I would imagine.
Do you just know that an average Alaskan is 250 or just guessing?
No. I mean, how much insulation would you have to live up there?
Whew, it'd be chilly.
Right? Like, whew, I'd want some layers.
Some layers. True.
So we can spitball this whole thing, the whole podcast, but I think that the idea,
We're gonna strike the first 7 minutes.
well, that is part of like the fun and the interaction, and the whole year we have had fun. I think that we enjoy what we do across all the companies that we work with and the technology and everything. How do we want to close this year? What have we learned? The stuff that the providers have tried to share or influence the tech leaders or the companies. How do we actually change all this or reflect on everything that have happened?
I mean, it's been a pretty depressing couple of weeks for me, honestly, which really has nothing to do with my life, but rather the kind of constant social feed that I see of companies doing more and more layoffs. Right. Well, I mean, Paul, you and I work for reasonably small companies, right?
Yep.
My heart goes out to people, but I don't have job openings for 775,000 people that I've seen be laid off thus far.
This is mostly large organizations. Like these are mostly large technology organizations who overhired, and now they're seeing the consequences of that. They're not making the numbers they anticipated, and now they have to streamline go to market.
I mean, I'm not sure I buy that, to be honest. Right? Because I'm seeing, from the boots on the ground, I'm seeing whole wipes, not a recovery. Right? I buy some of that, but historically, like anytime, it's kind of like being at a party. You've been at a party, you're mingling with people, and you kind of get tired, but you've got some obligation to be there, so you can't be the first person to leave. But everybody starts kind of getting into the same attitude, which is we'd all kind of like to leave, but none of us are brave enough to be the first person to leave. So we wait for the first person to leave, and then there's kind of a bum rush to the door. That's kind of how layoffs have gone, at least since I've been in the job market, right? Where all these companies hire, they do the normal thing, blah, blah, blah. And then the winds start to shift a little bit. They wait for somebody kind of break the seal on layoffs. And then they just go, cool, well, we're just going to lay everybody off. And not everybody, everybody isn't, I'm being hyperbolic a little bit there, but they over wipe, right? And some of it is a real simple, like everybody we hired in the last 3 years, we hired at an inflated wage price. Now wages have fallen, so we'll just wipe all those people out and then go back and rehire at 40% less.
Right. They're going to carve deeper knowing that they'll be able to rehire anyway because everybody's laying off. Sure. Arguably, they're creating their own employee positive environment by participating with the rest of the employees.
I mean, it's not employee positive in any way.
Well, I just meant it's better for the employee because there's more people on the market.
It's better for the employer.
Sorry, that's what I meant.
Yeah. Way worse for the employee every single time. Right. And at no point does anybody go, "Hey, Mr. CEO, I think you need to take a smaller bonus." Right? No, all we're seeing is a continuing widening of the wage gap and a just destruction of a successful middle class. Right. And so, here it is Christmas, and it's the most depressing Christmas I've seen in since 2008.
Is there a better approach that could have been taken? In other words, they wanted a growth of 25%. Some organizations did 60% last year of growth, like a Databricks as an example. If they're doing that kind of explosion growth, then they've got to hire a bunch of people. But if they did 50, 40, they would have had to carve out way more than they needed to carve out. Like, should they have grown more slowly in order to deal with that growth, or should they have not hired at all? Or what would have been the alternative approach?
I mean, the alternative is you make a commitment that people have a place with you long term. You don't open a role if you don't plan on that role being open for 30 years. Right. It's one thing to say you don't fit our culture, you're not the right person, or you don't fit the company, you can't do the work, you're incapable of doing the work, you oversold yourself. That's fine. Right. But everything else is seeing people as a commodity and is freaking terrible. You're creating value to the shareholders hand over fist. Knock it off.
So figure out scale that's not human impactful.
Right.
Figure out some other way to scale via automation or just via partnerships where you're not the one person involved in depleting somebody's livelihood.
Correct. Right. And I mean, like I think we all just kind of have to start standing up and saying that, like, we're not doing layoffs. Right. We're making decisions about individuals so that the company can continue to be the company that it needs to be. But that means if you fit the company, then, okay, if it's $200,000 to keep you on board, then we take $200,000 less in profit to keep you on board, and we weather the storm, knowing that we're building a culture, and the culture is important, and people are important, and there is more than just appeasing shareholders. Like, at some point, we have to do that. Otherwise, all we're going to do is create France pre-French Revolution.
Well, we know that the hardest thing to do is add an FTE. So are we suggesting it should be harder to add an FTE?
If that's what it takes, then absolutely.
That you need far more justification comparatively?
It doesn't seem like there's any reason behind the justification. If the second things change, somebody goes, you need to lay off 25% of your staff.
Right.
Why did I work so hard to hire them if it takes no effort and you never talk to me to figure out to lay them off?
Right.
Like, why did I go through all of that effort? It seems like the effort's absolute bull.
Right. When they should have given you permission to hire 10% instead of 25%.
Sure. But also, you bent me over backwards doing due diligence to hire those people, but you took no effort in firing them.
Right.
Shouldn't the effort at least be equal?
Right.
Like, shouldn't you go, well, like, okay, we did everything we possibly could. We got rid of that huge lodestone that is the office that nobody freaking wants to come into. Right. We got rid of 3 of our 4 private planes. We cut our CEO's compensation from 31 million to 13 million.
Right.
Shouldn't those things matter? And it doesn't seem like any of those things matter. It seems like,
especially since at the same time we hear a lot of layoffs, we also hear a lot of return to office, mandatory return to office.
Well, and those two things seem like they're going hand in hand. We don't want to do layoffs. Instead, we'll let you opt out by creating a rule that is insane.
Right.
And it's only insane from the perspective of you didn't hire those people saying, hey, at some point there will be a return to office, so you must live commuter distance from the office. This is only temporary.
Right.
Right? You can't then go, everybody comes in the office. Dude, you hired somebody 3 time zones from an office because they were the right person for the right job. And what are they supposed to do now?
Or worse, the local office is fit for 50 people and you hired 1,000 people in that particular domain.
Sure.
You're not gonna fit.
Sure.
Even if you try.
The truth is, it's not a return to office. The truth is, it's a voluntary selection to lay off. Right? I'm not going to give you a severance because you chose not to come into the office. You violated corporate policy. We don't have a choice but to lay you off. I didn't see you in the office. You violated the rules. I got to lay you off. I got to fire you with cause. Well, that's bullshit.
It's a very spreadsheet centric decision because it's quite possible all of those people were the important people, right? If you were 9-boxing those people, they could have been top right hand. They may not be left hand at all.
Correct.
So you're treating everybody like a number at that point.
Yep. I mean, the world would be a whole lot better if we just took the people that treated people like a number and started the layoffs with them.
Right.
So if you think about the people that are applying for those jobs, how do they should be looking for a company that will not do that? Or get ready when it happened? Are you then technically putting people always on easy that, hey, always have something on the side, be looking for a job because you're going to get fired any moment? What do you think that they should be doing?
The person that made me the most resilient in the entire market is the person I share this podcast with.
Carlos, thank you.
Yes. No, Paul years ago said, hey, like you need to think about this job as 2 things. The first is, think of it like you're a doctor, right? You have your private practice that you must maintain. That is your reputation. That is your value in the market. That is your side gig, whatever that happens to be. And you have the work you do at the hospital that you're paid by somebody else and contracted by somebody else. Like you have to stop thinking about this as you show up for a job, you do the job, you go home. Otherwise, you're not resilient at all.
But then the challenge with that is that a lot of companies, then they don't want you doing those side gigs because then you're sharing the expertise, or they think that you're using whatever you learn, that then you're competing against them. Because I was thinking when you were saying that,
if there's enough employees who demand it, then it will become true.
Explain a little bit about that.
So if 50% of your staff also do something else on the side, then everybody gets to do it on the side, right? It's the employer only has control when it's the few and far between. But when everybody decides I have to think about my career as much as I think of my job, then everybody's allowed to think that way. And that should be reasonable.
I mean, the reality is we need to stop with the BS contractual slavery. Right. I don't have any need to control you when you're not working on the stuff that I need you to work on. And if the only way that I know to measure you is I can see you for 40 hours, it's no wonder productivity sucks. Right. Because I'm a bad manager. Right.
And people have to value reputational growth. People have to value your participation in a community. People have to value your participation in an industry, right? Your consideration for contribution to open source projects. These are all positively impactful to the company, not just positively impactful to you. Like Carlos, you have, I don't know, 30,000 followers, give or take, maybe more than that.
60.
Yeah, that was just one channel. So all the channels is 60 and change, right? It's like you're telling me that's not valuable to an employer that you have 60,000 followers.
That's what I was thinking, because again, like I just got approached by someone to do some work for them, specifically for that reason. And I was thinking, like, I know that, like Howard, like you mentioned, there's a lot of technology professionals that are really good at their job. For some reason, they're getting laid off, or there's a change in what they're doing, but they're not doing anything else to grow outside because they may be afraid of what could happen. And I have to mention the word that it needs to be mentioned, because if not, we're not gonna get views. We need to mention AI, Gen AI, Gen AI. Uh, but
Hashtag.
but this year, one of the things that have helped a lot of people to get some view is that they have tried something outside that they probably were not doing, and the only way to learn it is trying something else outside, and then they can come and see if it makes sense for their customers, because it takes too long to implement something on an enterprise. We know it. The sales cycle is longer, the security or changes. But the only way that you're going to learn it is by trying something, let's say, outside of the four walls. But then they get penalized sometimes because you're using those technologies, you're doing something else. So, how do we get to a happy medium, to something that is like, I remember having the innovation team, or you having some innovation. I forget what you used to call that on Fridays. You used to just do something that was nothing related to the company, but so many innovations came out of those Fridays. How do we help the technology professionals to come and do something?
I mean, the reality is you have to take control of your career. It's not a job, it's a career. Your job is what you go to on a day-to-day and who you work for right now. Right? You must build a career, and a career means more than just your job. Right? So there's a ton of great people that are being laid off right now. There's also a ton of not great people that are being laid off right now. Right? And the difference is, how much time do you spend growing your career, investing in yourself, building a career, versus how much time do you go from job to job? You can't go job to job. There is no reliability anymore. There is nothing that says you will be employed by that employer long enough to fill your retirement account.
Right. And then in parallel, encouraging IT executives, technology executives, who tends to be the people listening to what we're saying now, to be open and honest about the value created by letting your employees explore opportunities beyond the 40 hours they work for you. So two things have to be true. You shouldn't expect 100 hours. You should expect 40, right? Of the 40, you expect dedication. You expect jumping in, rolling up the sleeves, getting things done, potentially doing 60 hours worth of brain work in 40 hours of time. That's awesome. That's kind of my expectation, right? But everything else outside of that is all career centric. Do some podcasts, do some programming, write an app, talk on a stage somewhere. Like, do anything you can to improve your credibility, because the only thing that could possibly happen to me as an organization is positive to everything you just do. All the relationships you build is now our relationships, right? All of the content you create is now our content, because in as much as you might say, this is the Carlos Vargas podcast, I easily go to your LinkedIn and see exactly who you work for. Now I think it's that podcast too, right? Those are all positive things. So as an IT executive, all of these are accretive to your organization. They are not taking away from it, because the reality is Carlos or Howard or Paul isn't going to work the 41st hour for you, and it matters, right? That's not accretive to your organization.
So then, if that's the case, why is it so challenging for some of these organizations to foster the talent? Because I have to imagine that hiring someone, and I think that we did the numbers on one of the podcasts. It takes X amount to hire, then to maintain them, to build before they can be productive.
Mm-hmm.
Then why not leverage it so they can keep helping the company grow in a different way? I used to call it tribal knowledge. Like,
Well,
you learn the company. Now,
sure. In order to do that, though, you have to give a shit. Like, in order to do that, you have to care. In order to do that, you have to say, like, we're no longer going to foster bad managers. That would be step one. Right? Everyone's going to go to management training, leadership training, learn how to be an empathetic leader, learn leaders eat last, right? Learn these things so that we can build and foster a culture where we're all working together towards a common goal, including management, including leadership. Right? Well, in order to do that, the company is going to invest millions of dollars into its people, just in middle management.
Right.
What's the first question that the CFO is going to ask? How do I know they'll stay after I make the investment? Won't they just go someplace else?
Right.
Which is a dumb question because they miss the point, which is if you build a culture that people want to be a part of, they will stay. So build the culture that makes people want to stay. And then you don't have to worry about them taking that. What are they going to do with that training someplace else? I really wish your company was like the company I just left.
Right.
Right. The only way they say that is if they get laid off from a company they really liked working at. So why don't you build a company that people really like working at? Then that's not really an issue. Also, they'll be more productive. Right. Which means you don't have to worry about them not being available for 100 hours a week. 40 hours is probably just fine because they're effective. They're working together. They enjoy the work that they're doing and they're highly productive.
Yeah. The old school way of thinking was I have to get them to work more than 40 hours because I don't believe they're putting 40 hours in, right? They're putting 27 in. And they're doing meetings, they're having breaks, they're doing long lunches. All of those other things is what's making up the 40. And since everybody's been working at home or remote, people are normally putting in way more than 40.
Mm-hmm.
Right? They're not taking an extra long break. They're not napping in the middle of the day. You tend to be more dedicated. You tend to be more professional. You tend to be more productive when you have exclusive time to do work. And it's easy to do that at home comparatively, right? So that's kind of a weird irony. There are some exceptions, right? So I appreciate that there might be some intellectual property exceptions. So if you work for a product company and your job for 40 hours a week is build code for a product, and then in your moonlighting time, also build code for something else that might be adjacent to the product, I buy that. Maybe there should be protections in place for intellectual property so that you're not using your brain power to make money outside of the organization in that particular field.
But within the context of that,
yeah.
So little of what we do is actual intellectual property. Can you patent it? Is it in fact a trade secret? If the answer to those things is no, it's not intellectual property, knock it off. The fact that I know how to write in the language that you use at the office to build apps, not intellectual property. My property, my intellect.
That's fair. Right? I'm only thinking adjacent and or competitive and or, so close to what my business is that it might have a detrimental effect to me.
Sure.
Yeah.
Like I would agree with that. Yeah. Right. You can't build a competing product to the product to which I pay you to build.
Correct. As an example. Yeah. And maybe so there's some ethical or moral boundaries of you going a podcast, with extreme perspectives, extreme beyond the brand of my company, as an example. Right.
I mean, sure. Maybe have an acceptable kind of policy.
Right.
Right. And
it's never stopping you from doing it, but you might have consequences for doing it.
Consequences are fine. Right. But the consequence can't be you went on a podcast and said 3 words.
Right.
We didn't authorize it. No. What did I say? What did I say as a representative of the company to harm the company?
Right.
Exactly. Are you representing the company when you're doing a podcast or something else on your own time?
Depends. Depends is the answer. How are you introduced? Right. If I'm introduced as Howard Holton, COO of GigaOM,
okay,
then yeah. If I'm Howard Holton, fellow tech nerd, yeah.
Right. That being said, if you're Howard Holton, fellow tech nerd, and then bash GigaOM, yeah, that would be a problem.
Sure.
Because you don't have 2 personalities. You still have the same role, and therefore you still work there, right? So there should be the same expectation, right, of being pro your organization at some point.
Well, and if your personal opinions are diametrically opposed to those you must maintain professionally, that should also be a problem.
Right.
Right.
That's right. If you have such negative opinions of the place that you work, it's in your best interest to not work there. Feel free to find some other place.
For sure. Or your customers or your coworkers or whatever.
Right. Yeah.
There's a whole list of things that, you should be held accountable for. You should be held accountable for your opinions. the things you say in public, you should be held accountable for. Period. End statement. So,
Yeah, but all of those things are limited exceptions, in my opinion. That shouldn't prevent you from doing podcasts. That shouldn't prevent you from writing code. That shouldn't prevent you from being on a board. That shouldn't prevent you from
100%.
doing any of those things. Because your career is beneficial to me.
Yes, and it's also
your job is beneficial for 40 hours. Your career is beneficial for years.
Yeah, and that's the important thing, right? Is people who maintain their careers, who really think about it that way, are far more valuable to the organizations
Right.
to which they work. Not just far more valuable in an open market.
Right.
They are absolutely positively disruptive to the organizations that they work in a good way. Right? They are the rising tide that raises all boats. But you have to do that. You have to be that. Right? I've literally quit companies because there's just, I don't want to be the smartest person in the room all the time. Like, that's ridiculous. That doesn't help me grow. That doesn't help me learn. What does that do for my career?
Right.
Right.
It's funny because it's diametrically opposite between recruiting and active employment. In recruiting, they have no idea what your 40 hours would look like. They can't determine the quality of your code. They don't know how much your contribution is every 40 hours. They know none of that thing during recruiting. All of they know in recruiting is your career.
Yep.
Your history, your skill sets, your networking, your followership. That's the only thing they know. And they're satisfied of finding you a role and hiring you to the position until day one of work. And then they ignore the career and focus entirely on the 40 hours that you're contributing.
Well, let's be clear. They're done with you the second you're placed because they're recruitment.
Right.
Someone else's job takes over who didn't really follow the recruitment process so closely and goes, cool, now I have to leverage this person to get value from them so that I'm seen as a good manager that hires good people that produces good work for the company. Right. Like, let's not overcomplicate it. Right. Boil it down to, how do I get the job done in the most efficient, effective way possible? Great. Right. But also, the day you get hired, you need to be thinking about, cool, if I was back on the open market, what am I doing right now to make myself more valuable, more appealing, better? What did I learn from this process that'll help me make this process easier the next time? And frankly, how can I share that with everybody?
Isn't that a little bit of a backward mentality? Or I'm thinking, when you're saying that, if I just got hired by a company and I'm going to start getting ready for what's going to happen when they let me go or when you go somewhere else, how do we help the people to focus on what they have to do for that company?
Well, you don't have to focus on what you do for that company. Everything that you do in your career helps with what you do with that company. Right? I'm not building a farming career in my spare time. Right? If I continue to improve the things to which have made me the most valuable that I am, that reflection is in my day-to-day work as well. And if it's not, then you actually need to find another job because you picked something where the requirements of the job don't align to your skills and passions and drive and determination, and thus will push you off of the career that you've set yourself on. Again, it's why if you start thinking about it like a career, that becomes so much more valuable, right? Because then you actually have a determined target, right? Everything becomes purposeful rather than just, well, I got to find a job, so let me go find a job. Well, I'm taking this job, which doesn't really do what I want to do, but I'm taking this job so I can have a job. You're doing that because you didn't actually set out to build a career and do it with focus and determination. Otherwise, your reputation would precede you. Right.
Are you suggesting that this situation isn't real, where I'm a rancher, I work 100 hours a week in my ranch, but I just need a little bit more money to overcome, so I take a 40-hour programming job. My career is ranching, but I do the programming job.
Correct. I suggest that is not real.
So you're telling me Yellowstone, the TV series, isn't realistic?
There was a software developer that worked on the ranch on Yellowstone?
No, but each family member had different jobs. One was the attorney general. One was
sure, but they didn't work at the ranch. They were members of a family that had $100 million ranch. Like, come on.
I'm just saying.
Right. And Trump is CEO of a social media company.
That's correct. See? Same thing.
Right.
40 hours a week doing that.
Right. At some point, your money gets to the point where you're not actually working anymore. You're you're spending time doing things, but that's not where your money comes from.
Right.
Like when your career is to spend the money of the foundation, do whatever the hell you want. Like my advice doesn't matter at that point. And none of those people are listening to this podcast going, holy crap, I've been spending the foundation's money wrong.
Nice.
So what could be something that we can help our audience before the end of the year so they can start getting ready for the next year?
Hands down, the best tool that I've found for this whole mess is, in fact, AI. And if you're not learning it and you're not getting benefit from it, like if I just said that and you went, I tried it, didn't work for me. You did it wrong. You just did it wrong. I'm sorry, you did it wrong. Right? The reality is you can use it to research companies. You can use it to research topics. You can use it to learn more, get deeper, break down a 10K. If you don't know what a 10K is, ask AI, what's a 10K for a publicly traded company? Right? Like the ability to use that, leverage that to help you learn faster is unparalleled. There's nothing, right? The first time I had it explain something and it clicked, I felt like I was in the Matrix. I just learned Kung Fu.
Can
Right?
you imagine Howard with the I want to jump and learn Kung Fu?
That would be I kind of want to make like Matrix Fat Nerd Edition. You know what I mean? I mean, they're all digital. Why does he have to be skinny and in good shape? I'm just
Now,
saying.
is it Bruce Lee Kung Fu or Kung Fu Panda Kung Fu? It's a
Same
wide spectrum.
Same. Either would be an upgrade at this point. Right. But seriously, like you've got some time off, learn AI. You're spending time with family, you can do it right on your phone.
Yeah.
Right.
Micro learning definitely will be important. Getting a deeper appreciation for the finances of your own company, also deeply important, right? It is not valuable for you to hear every quarter the CFO give you an update and you be satisfied with that response. You should ensure that you have a pretty decent understanding of the forecast, the pipeline, the backlog, the budget versus the actuals, the investment plan versus the investment plan, the debt versus the non-debt. You should know all of these things, or at least ask all the questions, so that you have a deeper appreciation for the health of the organization. It is clear in my mind that it's the best predictor of your role going forward is the health of the company today.
And if your company won't give you that information for any number of reasons, one, are they publicly traded? In which case, it's out there. Yeah. And two, find a publicly traded company that mirrors yours and research them, or 5 of them, or 10 of them.
Right.
Right. Your company is still subject to the market dynamics to which they participate. So learn those market dynamics. Right. How are what does the health of your customers look like? Like if you're in CPG right now, you're in trouble. Consumers don't have any money.
Right.
A year of layoffs, a year of long time unemployment is really taking its toll. So if you produce some consumer good and that's what you rely on to survive, your company does, and you're like, well, we haven't had layoffs yet, so we're fine. Maybe you need to take a look and go, actually, the market to which we sell is in a massive slowdown or about to hit a massive slowdown. Maybe I'm not as comfortable as I thought I was.
Mm-hmm.
Right? If interest rates are going up and your customers are buying cars or homes, right? And you sell cars or homes, probably need to think about it. What is this going to be like? Is this going to last? Is this going to stick around? If you're in renewable energy in the US and the Republicans have taken the House, the Senate, the White House, and the Supreme Court, you probably have to think about how reliant on subsidies is my company for its existence. Right? Like the market dynamics, I would argue, are more important even than the financials for your individual company, because one is effectively public knowledge available with a little bit of scraping and scratching and research. The other one, they may not tell you, right? One you could get right now. You could spend the time between Christmas and New Year's learning about the market dynamics and the predictions and kind of what's happening and how you are going to be affected, I guarantee there's 3 YouTube channels just on your industry.
And if you're an importer of services or parts or products, then you really have to think about what it means to your pricing. And then lastly, and more macro dynamically, is currency, right? Currency is fluctuating more than it ever has been. And therefore you have to think about, if you're not diversified enough in how you're achieving your revenue, then you're going to have a pretty dramatic swing in your monthly P&L.
Well,
So here's all the bad news. Any good news, Howard? Any optimism for 2025?
Well, I'm not pessimistic. I'm just disappointed. I mean, the reality is, right? Inflation's low, employment's picking up, right? These things will absolutely pass, right? This is not, the only way these things do not pass is failure of an entire economy. Were the U.S.'s economy to fail, so does everybody else's. I doubt that's going to happen. There's entirely too much motivation to prevent that.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So this too shall pass. It's really right. So how do you set yourself up to be on the immune side rather than the harmed side the next time this happens? It's cyclical. It happens all the time. Right. Every 6, 8, 10 years, this happens. So, really use the time well and set yourself up to be more resilient rather than less resilient.
So 2025, year of the career versus year of the
Year
job.
of the career versus year of the job. 100%. I love it.
Well, there you have it, my friends. It's been an interesting year. We have learned a lot. We want to keep growing a lot. But make sure that you take the time to grow and take care of your career, not just your job. So we'll see you, my friends, next year here on The Sweet Spot.